In this lesson, we're going to try to improve readability of our tests by using constants, because currently there are lots of hard-coded values that we are using in our tests, and it would be good to use readable names instead of random values. Let's start with activities.test.ts. Right here for the seconds to complete property, we're using 3600 seconds. But to make it clear that this amount of seconds corresponds to 1 hour, I'm going to replace this value with usage of constant seconds an hour. And all the constants that we are going to use are defined inside constants.ts file. So in here we could leave it as is, but I actually prefer to also multiply this constant by amount of hours. This way we are clearly seeing how many hours this amount of seconds represents. And I'm going to follow similar approach when replacing other hard-coded values. For example, in this case, we're going to multiply seconds in hour by 2, since 7200 seconds correspond to 2 hours. In the third case in here, we're also using 3600 seconds, which is 1 hour. So I'm going to multiply seconds in hour by 1. And as for the values that we are passing as the second argument into calculate activity completion percentage function, in every expectation in here, we'll also represent those as an expression by multiplying seconds in hour constant by appropriate coefficient. So in the first case, we have to pass 0 amount of seconds, so I'm gonna multiply seconds an hour by 0. In the second case, we have to pass 1800 seconds, which we can get by multiplying seconds an hour by 0.5. And finally, to pass 3600 seconds, we're going to multiply seconds an hour by 1. And as for the value which represents 100%, we also have a constant called 100% for such cases. So I'm going to replace 100 with this constant 100%. Moving on to the next file with tests functions.test.ts. In the first test, we're seeing that we are using a bunch of expectations, and we are passing different hard-coded values into every call of format seconds with sign function. So I'm gonna represent all these values by using expressions with the constant. So in the first case, I'm going to multiply seconds in minute constant by 0 to get 0 seconds eventually. And as we can see, seconds in minute constant holds value of 60, amount of seconds in 1 minute. This way we'll clearly see how many minutes we are passing into this function. So in the second case, we're going to multiply seconds in minute by 1, since in here we have to pass 60 seconds. In the third case, we're gonna have to pass amount of seconds which corresponds to 3 minutes. So I'll multiply this constant by 3. In the fourth case, we have to pass 1800 seconds. So I'm multiplying seconds in minute by 30. In the next case, it will be a little bit different, since we'll already have a constant which holds amount of seconds in 1 hour. So I'm basically going to use this constant. And finally, in the last case, we're doing this multiplication to obtain amount of seconds in 1 day. But fortunately, we already have a constant which stores this value. It's called seconds in day. So let's replace this expression with the constant. Moving on to the next set of expectations. These expectations are pretty similar to previous ones, with the only difference that in here we are passing negative amount of seconds. So what we can do in here is basically do the same replacement and use same expressions, but in front of every such expression, we're basically going to prepend minus to get negative values of seconds. As for the next test, which tests function called format seconds, we also have a pretty similar expectations to those used in the previous test. So I'm going to copy over this set of expectation from the previous test paste it into the next one. And then all I will have to do in here is to replace format seconds with sign function with format seconds. Then we can remove previous expectations. And we also have to remove the sign from every string that we are using to compare resulting value with. And the beauty of having tests is that whenever we're gonna make a mistake, we'll just have to take a look at the test execution to see whether we have broken anything or not. In this case, everything is okay, all tests have passed, so we can continue with our refactoring. The next test we're gonna work on is located inside time.test.ts. Let's scroll down to the very end of this file, and right here, when we are testing 2seconds function, we're passing amount of milliseconds into every call. I would replace those so-called magic numbers with expressions to make this test a little bit more readable. So how can we represent 10,000 milliseconds? By using one of the available constants. We can do so in the following way. Let's multiply milliseconds in second constant, which holds amount of milliseconds in 1 second, by 10. And also, by prepending minus in front of this expression, we'll get minus 10,000. And now let's do same replacement for other cases. In the second case, we're gonna multiply milliseconds in second by 1 to get value of 1000. In the third case, we have to pass 0 milliseconds. So to get 0, we just have to multiply this constant by 0. And the next two expressions will be very similar to previous ones. In the first case, we're multiplying this constant by 1 to get 1000. And finally, to get 10,000, we'll have to multiply milliseconds in second by 10. Before moving on to the next test, let's make sure that all tests are green. And they are. Let's go into the next file, timelineitems.test.ts. In here, I'm going to replace hard-coded values with constants, just like we have done in the previous files. So for this activity seconds property, we have to use 0. So let's multiply seconds in hour by 0. For the next one, to get 3600 seconds, we'll have to multiply seconds in hour by 1. In the next case, it will be the same expression, seconds in hour multiplied by 1. Next, to get 7200, we have to multiply seconds in hour by 2. And to get 1800 seconds, we have to divide seconds in hour by 2, or, in other words, multiply by 0.5. There are actually quite a bit of such hard-coded values in this file. I'm going to speed up the video and quickly replace all such occurrences with expressions, following the same principle. And finally, for these two expectations, let's also represent amount of seconds by using expression. To get 5400 seconds, we have to multiply seconds in hour by 1.5. And to get 3600 seconds, we'll need to multiply seconds in hour by 1. And with that, all our tests are passing, and we were able to improve their readability. Link to the source code of this lesson will be in the video description.